Good morning, Francorchamps. We are a day past the Belgian Grand Prix, and that means that we are starting the summer break for the Formula One season here in 2023 when I am recording and you are seeing this video. It is a Monday morning by the time this video goes out, but today, ahead of our Formula One live stream, I wanted to talk about Formula One drivers and where I think they're sitting this year. I wanted to rank all of them on a standard S through F tier. Of course, there's 21 drivers now that Nick De Vries has been replaced by Daniel Ricciardo. But my rankings are completely subjective. It's my interpretation of how these drivers have been doing with the cars that they have, given all of the knowledge that I have about the cars and about the tracks this season. And so my limited knowledge on the subject and not knowing the ins and outs plays into my ranking. So you may have a completely different ranking. You may completely disagree with where I put people on this list in comparison with their teammates. So please be gentle with the discussion down in the comment section below, but I would love to get your opinions. But like I say, keep it fresh, I guess, for lack of a better term. But we're going to start from the bottom to the top on my ranking, getting all the way from the bottom of F tier in 21st place and all the way up to first place in S tier. But that being said, halfway through the 2023 season, my last place driver right now, one of two drivers I have in F tier, it's got to be Nick De Vries. I had a lot of hope going into this season with Nick De Vries, given his track record with being a reserve driver last year for, was it Williams? His history in he won the Formula E title, didn't he? And has history in either F3 or F2, but has been very, very good in the past. And the fact that he came up to a position that opened up for the secondary team of the best team on the grid, the best car on the grid, I'll give him a little leeway for the fact that the AlphaTauri car is the worst car on the grid this year from what we've seen so far. They are the worst performing team on the grid this year. But he has very little excuse for what he has performed at. Let's take a look at his results here. We have, let's see, of his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 races that he was a part of. He finished in the bottom 5 4 times and retired once. He has 3 14th place finishes, 1 15th place finish, and his highest finish was a 12. When you compare that to Yuki Tsunoda, granted, Yuki has more history with the car. He understands the car and the team better. Nick De Vries really struggled, especially in qualifying. I think it has to be said that he was the weakest driver on the track on the grid this year, and I don't blame Red Bull for replacing him there. So I think he sits in F tier. Very disappointed by his performance, like I said, especially given his track record with Formula 2, 3E, whatever subdivisions you want to consider him and his history being a part of. He was very good there. It didn't translate going into the top tier. It'd be great to see him have a second chance, but given that someone like Mick Schumacher is not even on the grid this season, it'll be tough to see De Vries come back from being ousted even before the halfway point of the season. In 20th place, as an American, it's got to be Logan Sargent. He has underperformed significantly, especially in comparison to his teammate Alex Albon, who sits up in 13th place with 2 retirements. Logan Sargent has a single retirement. He has 2 bottom finishes. Let's see, he has finished in 12 races. He has finished out of the bottom 5 3 times. So 12 races, he has finished in the bottom 5 or retired all but 3 times. I think of the drivers left on the grid, the 20 drivers that we currently have on the grid, I think he is easily the weakest. He is the lowest ranked of all. Granted, none of them have any points, but he, of all of the drivers that have raced in every race this season, I think he is easily the weakest of them. I think he sits firmly in F tier. He has seriously underperformed. As an American Formula One fan, he has brutally disappointed, even with a Williams car. I don't think Williams has that bad of a car this year, especially given what Alex Albon has been able to do with it. But for me, those 2 bottom drivers that sit in F tier are going to be De Vries in last place, and right above him, Logan Sargent there. We move up to D tier. I got to put bottom of D tier. I'm going to put Kevin Magnussen. So where is Magnussen here? K-Mag. Now you could argue the placement of both Haas drivers. Haas, in my opinion, has where are they sitting in the rankings right now? They are 8th above Alfa Romeo, actually. But given what they have for a car ahead of Alfa Romeo, I think the Alfa Romeo drivers have been more consistent with their vehicle, and especially in comparison to his teammate Nico Hülkenberg, I think despite the fact that he has more top 10 finishes, he is lower in the points given that Hülkenberg did have a 7th place finish. He has one retirement and has sat in the bottom 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 12 races, including a retirement. So 7 out of the 12 races, he has finished bottom 5 or retired. I think he has underperformed, even given the car that they have this year. This is one of the better years Haas has had in the time that I have been watching Formula One, and I think he is seriously underperforming. So Magnussen, for me, sits bottom of D tier. Right above him is going to be Zhou Guanyu. So I mentioned the fact that Alfa Romeo has a weak car this year compared to what they have in the past. I think Zhou Guanyu has underperformed. I don't think Valtteri Bottas has done a fantastic job, but I think he is a lot more average with what he's been able to do with the car than Zhou Guanyu. He's at least been more consistent in the last few races, at least. It's looking up for Bottas and the team on his side of things. On Guan Yu's side, we see 2 9th place finishes, which are less points than Bottas, but or Bottas, however you want to pronounce Valtteri's last name. But we see a 1, 2, 3, 4 bottom 5 finishes and a retirement. So 5 races in 12 that he has finished at the bottom, whereas Bottas only has 3. I think he has been the less consistent of the 2 Alfa Romeo drivers, given the car that they have. And props to both drivers that they have been able to at least get some points out of the second weakest car on the grid right now. But I think of the 2 drivers, he's the one that gets to sit in D tier. And then top of D tier, this may be harsh of me, and I actually don't have a picture for him, but imagine right there, I'm going to put Daniel Ricciardo. Now, what we have seen from Ricciardo so far, he had an okay finish in Hungary. He actually finished ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, his teammate, not by much, and I want to give Yuki a little bit of credit. It was just a tough race all around for the team. What we saw yesterday, I'm recording this the night before, so I'm recording this on the night following the Belgian Grand Prix. What I have seen this morning is Ricciardo struggling to deal with a car. This is the same issue that he had last season. It's the reason McLaren didn't renew his contract and instead went for someone like Oscar Piastri, who is overperforming with the McLaren car this year. I think Ricciardo has a chance to challenge Perez for that second seat at Red Bull, but given what he has shown so far with even the worst car on the track, it looks like the same Danny Ricciardo. And I understand that people love Ricciardo. I understand he's a great person, great personality. He's fun to have on the grid, but as a driver, he is nowhere near where he used to be. And I think that we are seeing that even with the car that he's been given. I don't think that he is performing well so far. Given it's only been 2 races, but I don't have a lot of hope for the last half of the season with what Ricciardo has and what he has with the car that he's been given so far. I don't think, given what we've been seeing so far, that he gets the second spot at Red Bull over someone like Checo. So imagine that Ricciardo is the top of D tier. We move up to number 16. We move up to C tier. For me, it's got to be Lance Stroll. Now, I am of the camp that actually thinks that Stroll is a talented driver. I understand that he is given his spot because of daddy's money. I don't think that's the only credentials he has on the grid. I actually think that in years past, he has done very well with the cars that he's been given. The problem is this year, the 3rd best car on the track, arguably the 2nd best car on the track, even despite the point differentials, is Aston Martin. And the fact that Fernando Alonso is sitting in 3rd place way up here, beyond overperforming with the car that they have, and Lance Stroll is sitting down here in 9th with 2 retirements, 2 bottom 10 finishes, and not a single podium, whereas Fernando Alonso has 6 podiums and not a single bottom 10 finish. I understand that Alonso has the higher credentials, the higher background than Lance Stroll, but given that in years past, Lance Stroll has done very well with the limited cars that he's had, both with Racing Point and now with Aston Martin, I think the fact that he is so underperforming Alonso is not a good thing. And I think I'm just going to put him outside of D tier. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and put him up in C tier, but I think he is underperforming with a very good car right now. Now, granted, the last couple races, you see Alonso with a 9-5 finish, whereas Stroll has that 10-9. So very close in Hungary. I think a lot of that had to do with the change of tires. You heard Alonso complaining about it. You heard the team bosses complaining about it. But then you look at a 5-9 finish in Belgium. I think Alonso is well and above outperforming his teammate. He's the better driver, easily, but Stroll is underperforming with the car that they have. We move up to Pierre Gasly. Now, I want to preface this by saying that the 2 Alpine drivers could be switched in my rankings. The reason that I have put Gasly below Ocon on this is consistency. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 top 10 finishes out of Gasly, whereas Ocon here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for Ocon. You have 3 retirements for Ocon. And actually, I lied to you. They're both fairly inconsistent. I'm giving Ocon the benefit of the doubt in my ranking of the 2 Alpine drivers. One, for the fact that he does have a podium this season, a shock podium that was in Monaco. But then, of course, he's had some very unlucky penalties, and not all of them are necessarily his fault. And I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt and put Gasly below him. So Alpine has kind of underperformed, given what they have been able to do the last couple seasons. Right now, they are sitting in 6th place. I think they should be a 4th or 5th place car, and they haven't been able to do that. And I think it's more the car issues than the driver's issue. And so both of the drivers are going to sit C tier, but I think Gasly gets the bottom spot of the 2 Alpine drivers. Above him, I have put Nico Hülkenberg. Now, in comparison with Kevin Magnussen, I think he is very well outperforming Magnussen. He has 9 points, given that 7th place finish in Australia. He has a single retirement, which so does his teammate. But given the fact that Haas is sitting with this 8th place car right now, I think the fact that Hülkenberg has finished out of the bottom 5, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 12 times. So 4 times in the bottom 5, but one of those is a retirement. So 3 in the bottom 5, one of them a retirement. I think that is significantly better than his teammate. I think he has been a very average driver this year. I think that Haas made the right decision in having him drive the car this year. Magnussen is struggling. Despite his history with the team, Magnussen is struggling where Hülkenberg is pretty consistent, pretty average with what he's been able to do with the car. You see 17 and 15 popping up all the time. Very consistent despite the fact that it's not a great result for him. So I have Hülkenberg sitting right there in the middle of C tier. Right above him, I'm going to put Valtteri Bottas. Bottas, however you want to pronounce the Finn's name. He has 2 top 10 finishes. Obviously a very consistent driver. Given the fact that they have the 2nd worst car on the grid, I think the fact that Bottas has scaled out 2 top 10 finishes. He has 3 bottom 5 finishes. And no retirements, I think is very impressive. They have a bad car, and he's been fairly consistent, you could say, with it. The last 3 races, he has finished in 12th exactly. He has 5 points. He's below Hülkenberg in the points, but he has been consistent in trying to reach that 10th place spot. He's been bordering that 11th and 12th spot for over half of the races he's been in. So I think Bottas deserves to be a fairly average driver given the car that he has been dealt this season. And right above him, I'm going to put Esteban Ocon. I gave you my reasoning. I think despite the consistencies in comparison to his teammate, he has performed better, and a lot of the struggles that he has had in points finishes and in place finishes have been down to the penalties he's been given this season. Right above him, top of C tier, here's my controversial pick. I'm putting Charles Leclerc. Now, the reason I'm putting Charles Leclerc in C tier, despite the fact that they have a very inconsistent car this year, is he's been inconsistent. He has three podiums. He has sprint finishes here, but he also has 2 retirements early on in the season. He also has a bottom 10 finish, whereas Carlos Sainz has a single bottom 10 finish and a single retirement, but he has been brutally consistent. I think Carlos Sainz has overperformed this year despite what the points show. I think Charles Leclerc has really struggled to succeed with the car, and this has been an issue that they've had for the last several seasons. Ferrari is just Ferrari. The plan has not been successful, even with Charles Leclerc. Obviously, he's sitting with a higher point total. Right now, tied in that 5th place spot with George Russell. But Carlos Sainz right behind him, just 7 points behind him, and that's even without a podium finish for Carlos Sainz. So despite the fact that Sainz had to retire the car, for me today, for you tomorrow, yesterday, I think Sainz is the more impressive driver, especially given his history in the game. Leclerc is the more studious driver, I guess you could say. There is more expectations put on Leclerc, and the fact that he is only 7 points ahead of his teammate and brutally inconsistent with his car in comparison to his teammate, the lesser heralded Carlos Sainz, I think he deserves to sit in C tier. But let me know if you disagree with me in the comment section below, especially after today, given the fact that he did finish with a podium, whereas Sainz had that retirement. But we move up to B tier now. For B tier, bottom of B tier, I have Oscar Piastri. I think he has been incredible in his rookie season. Oscar Piastri sitting here in 11th place. He did have a retirement at the Belgian Grand Prix. He also had a retirement back in week 1 with Bahrain. Of course, McLaren really struggled in the first few weeks, just trying to figure out their new car, but they have been brutally consistent in the last several weeks. He had 4 or 5 finishes in the previous 2 races in Britain and Hungary, whereas his teammate sitting here, Lando Norris, has also been very consistent. We'll get to Norris in a second, but in certain cases, where we sit, I was going to make a point, and I think I'm mistaken. No, Piastri has has once outperformed his teammate, and that was in Canada. But for his rookie season, given all of the drama that was last season going into this season, where he was with Alpine and they expected him to be their driver, he said, "I'm not going to drive for you. I have done a backdoor deal with McLaren." He has proven himself as a solid second driver for McLaren. I think, like I said, despite today's finish, despite the retirement in week 1 and the struggles that McLaren had early on, they are currently sitting in 5th place. They are, in my opinion, they should be closer to Ferrari despite what the points show. The fact that Ferrari is up near Aston Martin, nearing that 3rd place spot, is actually kind of impressive given how Ferrari has struggled this year. So that's where I am putting Oscar Piastri, bottom of B tier. Right above him, I'm putting Carlos Sainz. Like I said, the 2 Ferrari drivers, very close, but we expect more out of Leclerc. The fact that he's only 7 points ahead of Carlos Sainz, who is not expected to be the number 1 driver for Ferrari. He has overperformed given the car that he has been given this year. I don't have enough credibility that I will give to him to put him in A tier, but given all the reasons that I gave in my Charles Leclerc explanation, I think he sits right above Piastri in the bottom half of that B tier there. Above him, I'm putting shock and awe. It's Alex Albon, and I actually forgot a driver, so I do apologize. We'll come back to one. I was looking at my list of who was remaining, and I definitely missed a driver. So Alex Albon, I'm going to put in B tier, and here's why. He has 2 retirements, and those were early on. Williams struggled early on in Saudi Arabia and Australia with the two vehicles, but he has 3 points finishes in the top 10. He has been brutally consistent between that 12 and 14 spot, 11 and 14 spot. I do apologize. I thought I had enough battery to finish this video without pausing to plug my computer in. Here's the problem with not editing your videos in post. So I am going to move my screen real quick and plug in my laptop there so we have enough battery to finish this thing. But Alex Albon, like I said, been sitting in that 11 through 14 spot, only 1 bottom 5 finish, despite the fact that he's driving a Williams. When you compare what he's been able to do with Logan Sargent, despite this being Sargent's rookie season, he is well and above outperforming his teammate. I'm looking here. I think that's the largest difference between 2 teammates that you have. Not on my tier, actually, when you compare Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll, but still very impressive how overperforming Alex Albon is doing with a Williams car. He has 11 points to, obviously, Sargent's 0. The fact that he is in 13th place with the 7th best car on the grid right now, tied in that 7th spot with Haas. Not the worst year Williams has seen, and actually they've been doing a little more consistent the latter half of this season, but I think Albon easily deserves that B placement that I have given him. The one that I skipped over on accident is Yuki Tsunoda. I'm going to put him right below Valtteri Bottas and right above Nico Hülkenberg. I think that in comparison to his 2 teammates, Yuki Tsunoda has been brutally consistent as well. You see 11, 11, 10, 10, 11 in his first 5 races. He's had a couple struggles further on here, but when you compare where his teammates were, very even. Like I said, he did perform under Daniel Ricciardo last week in Hungary, but he did have a top 10 finish today in Belgium, or yesterday for you, like I said. He has 3 points on the season given those 10 finishes, and easily better than both of his teammates. I think he is performing very well with or at least very consistently with the worst car on the grid. And despite the fact that he has had some struggles since his debut a couple years ago, I am a Yuki fan. I like his personality on the grid. I like his style of driving, despite the fact that he has a bad car. He's been very consistent this year, especially in comparison to his last couple seasons. I think he deserves to be right smack in the middle of average in that C tier. We move into our top 6, and we're sticking in B tier. Bottom of those top 6, staying in B tier, it's got to be Checo. He's done well. He has done well the last couple weeks, 3rd place finish and a 2nd place finish, but we saw the downfall of Sergio Perez and his title hopes when we got to Monaco. A 16th place finish in Monaco, and it hasn't been that great ever since. Despite the fact that he has a 3rd place finish in Austria, a 3rd place finish in Hungary, and now a 2nd place finish in Belgium, the first Red Bull 1-2 since Miami, Checo has dropped off, given credence to this idea that Ricciardo could replace him next season. I don't think that's the case. I think Perez is their best option for a secondary driver. Obviously, they're putting everything they have into Max Verstappen, but I want to complain about Perez's performance in the latter half of this season, given the fact that after Miami, there was hope that Perez could challenge for the title. That he was consistent with where they were going with the title. He could have been the first Mexican driver, I think, ever. It could. There might be one I'm missing, way back in like the 60s or 70s, but could have been the first driver, at least in a very long time, from Mexico to lead the Formula One season. And obviously it didn't happen in Miami, and he really struggled in Monaco, and things have gone downhill to the point where, last I did the math, I think Max Verstappen, if he wins out, despite how Perez finishes, I think he could clinch the title by Japan, if I did the math correctly. So Verstappen easily blowing him out of the water. The team has put everything into Max. Perez has underperformed, despite, like I said, the fact that he has some good finishes. But given the fact that their car is so dominant, I think Checo doesn't quite deserve to have that A tier spot, and so I'm putting him in B tier. And top of B tier, is my personal favorite driver on the track, and that's George Russell. I think he has underperformed his teammate when you compare last year. He overperformed. Hamilton struggled last season, and George Russell came kind of out of the woodwork to shock everybody and even beat his teammate. I love Russell. I love his style of driving. I love his personality. I think he is fun on and off the track. I think he's fantastic for the image of the brand that is Formula One. He, right now, like I said, is sitting tied in that 5th place spot with Charles Leclerc with 99 points. And that's despite the fact he only has 1 podium, not a single win this season. Obviously, no team other than Red Bull has had a win this season, but he is sticking close to Ferrari despite the fact that Charles Leclerc has 3 podiums and Russell only has 1. I think he's doing very well. However, second best car on the grid, Hamilton has 4 podiums. Hamilton is easily outperforming him this season, and Hamilton doesn't even have a single retirement. Russell has 2. I would like to see more from Russell, especially in comparison to Hamilton, and I don't think he has given me that. And so for that sake, I think despite how well Mercedes is doing this season in comparison to last season, I think he has to sit in B tier, not quite in that A tier. But we move up to A tier, bottom of A tier, just above his teammate. I'm going to put Lewis Hamilton. For the reasons I just gave, I think they have a fantastic car this year, despite the fact they are nowhere near Red Bull. They're doing everything they can. They are 50 points above Aston Martin, despite Aston Martin overperforming this season. Lewis Hamilton has been very, very consistent, especially in comparison to last season. His worst finish is in 8th in Austria. He has had 2 6th-place finishes, 2 5th-place finishes, 3 4th-place finishes, 2 fastest laps, and 4 podiums. I think he has kind of silenced the haters, including myself, compared to where he was at last season. I was kind of the camp last year that when you take away Lewis Hamilton's best car, he is really struggling to get his head on straight. This year, he has proven that that is not the case. He has come out swinging, despite the fact that they have a significantly worse car than Red Bull. The car is a lot better than it was last year, and Hamilton is trying his best to be competitive. I think he deserves to be in A tier. I don't think he quite deserves to be in S tier, but I think he is done very well in recuperating his losses from last season. Also in A tier, I have Lando Norris. I have Lando Norris in 3rd place. Norris currently sitting 8th in the standings, and you might think, why in the world have you put him above Hamilton despite what you see with the points finishes, what you see with the finishes? Lando Norris has 5 bottom 10 finishes. However, I have already prefaced this by saying that the first 2 races were horrible for McLaren. The first half of the season, first quarter of the season, I guess would be a better way to put that, McLaren really did struggle, and they've really come into their own since about Monaco, but you still saw struggles in Spain and Canada for Lando Norris. But he's been brutally consistent in the last 4 races. A 4th place finish in Austria, 2 back-to-back podium 2nd place finishes in Great Britain and Hungary, and then, of course, a 7th place finish in Belgium with a 6th place finish in the sprint. I think he has overperformed with the car they have. The car is currently sitting in 5th place. I don't know that it's a 5th place car, but they have been doing very well, especially in the last several races. I think Norris has brutally overperformed. I think he is one of the best performing drivers given the car that they have on the grid. I've been very impressed with him. If he is not a top prospect for a secondary driver for a team like a team like Mercedes or a team like Red Bull, I would be heavily looking at those teams to make a move on someone like Lando Norris. The fact that he is with a team like McLaren that is still in a rebuilding phase, he could easily go to a better performing team. Even something like Ferrari. If Ferrari was unimpressed with Carlos Sainz, which I think would be a terrible mistake, but he deserves a team that is willing to go with the skills that he is bringing to the table. Lando Norris is one of the best drivers on the grid right now, given the car that he has. I think he sits 3rd place, top of A tier. We move to S tier. Of course, I'm going to put Fernando Alonso in second place. You could argue that he deserves to be first place, especially with the car that they have right now. Like I said, sitting in that third place spot for best car on the grid, barely ahead of Ferrari. But he has overperformed compared to where he was last season with Alpine. The fact he switched teams in the offseason, everyone was wondering why. Sebastian Vettel struggled with the car last season. Lance Stroll struggled with the car last season. And Alonso comes in, and now they are the third best team on the grid. He is the third best driver on the grid. At one point was straddling that second place line alongside Sergio Perez. He could easily make a last half challenge for that second place spot. He's never going to come anywhere near Max Verstappen unless Max drops off the face of the planet for the second half of the year. But Alonso has very much overperformed with the car that he has been given this season. I think he deserves to be in that S tier, and the only reason I have him in second place is that I think, despite the fact that Verstappen has been given all the materials to succeed, he's still overperforming. I think Verstappen deserves to be in the top spot. I understand that everyone's frustrated because it doesn't make for very good racing. It's boring. Max has been given every opportunity in the world to win this championship, and yet he still has the audacity to complain about things every once in a while. I think Verstappen is in the same place that Lewis Hamilton was in the mid-2010s decade, where you easily have the best car on the track. And you have proven yourself to be the best driver on the track with that car. It'd be fascinating to see the competition between Verstappen and Hamilton with the Red Bull car. If they were to both drive the car that is currently the Red Bull vehicle, I still think Verstappen is outperforming every other driver on the grid. The fact that he is 30 to 40 seconds ahead of every other non-Red Bull car on the track is phenomenal, even ahead of someone like Checo Perez. I understand he's a much better driver than Checo even this season, and he's been given all of the tools by the team to succeed. Formula One is a political game, and he has played it very well. His father has played it very well. He has been given all of the tools to be the next champion for the next 10 years, the next Lewis Hamilton, the next Michael Schumacher, and I would be shocked to see him give up a hold on this title run that he is on track to have, going into what will be his third title, unless something major happens. I think he is outperforming everybody. I think Max Verstappen easily deserves that top spot. So, that being said, like I said, feel free to peacefully disagree with me in the comments section below. Tell me where you would put drivers. Tell me which drivers you would have switched with their teammates on this list. But here is my ranking halfway through the 2023 season with all 21 drivers on the grid. Like I said, imagine that Daniel Ricciardo was right there. But in 21st place, down in F tier, I have Nick De Vries driving for AlphaTauri. 20th place, top of F tier, I have Logan Sargent driving for Williams. We move up to D tier. In 19th place, I have Kevin Magnussen driving for Haas. 18th place, I have Zhou Guanyu, or Guanyu Zhou, however you want to switch the Chinese name around, driving for Alfa Romeo. And then in 17th place, top of D tier, not pictured here, driving for AlphaTauri is Daniel Ricciardo. We move up to 16th place in C tier, driving for Aston Martin, I have Lance Stroll. 15, driving for Alpine is Pierre Gasly. 14, driving for Haas is, Nico Hülkenberg. In, 16, 15, 14, 13th place, driving for AlphaTauri is Yuki Tsunoda. 12th place, still in C tier, driving for Alfa Romeo is Valtteri Bottas. 11th place, driving for Alpine, Esteban Ocon. And top of C tier in, is that 10th place? So 12, 11, 10th place is going to be Charles Leclerc. We move up to B tier. In 9th place, I have Oscar Piastri driving for McLaren. 8th place, driving for Ferrari, Carlos Sainz. 7th place, driving for Williams, Alexander Albon. In 6th place, driving for Red Bull, Sergio or Checo Perez. 5th place, top of B tier, driving for Williams. Oh gosh, dating myself there. Driving for Mercedes is George Russell. We move up to the top 4 in A tier. We have 4th place, driving for Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton. 3rd place, A tier, driving for McLaren, Lando Norris. 2nd place, in S tier, we have driving for Aston Martin is Fernando Alonso, and then, of course, top of everything, first place, in my opinion, the best driver on the grid, despite the fact that he has everything going for him, still the best, top of S tier, best driver on the grid, Max Verstappen. So let me know what you thought in the comments section below. This concludes our regular week of Formula One content. Of course, I didn't have that many videos to give you this week, but we are moving ahead onto something new coming up tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. Later on today, you will see our Formula One live stream like we do every week. This week, our subject, of course, Formula One, talking about the halfway point in the season along with other motorsports around the world. So stay tuned for that. We will see you this afternoon. Otherwise, we will see you very, very soon. See ya.